Well, not with Robert Lee, but as far as Radio Peace.
Yeah, right.
It was really his inspiration.
Yeah.
It grew out of the university in Costa Rica.
Yeah, right, in Costa Rica.
United Nations University.
We got a lot to talk about in that book, Forbidden Truth. That's
right.
really something else, you know. Welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program, if I may say so, an old friend of Conversations, that being Kevin Saunders. And he's wearing many hats these days. And at the outset, I'd like to read the introduction for Kevin, and then get into a conversation about many things that he's concerned with here in September of the year 2002. But Kevin Saunders is United Nations Bureau Chief for Radio for Peace International and commentator on Fox News. He is former science editor and reporter for CNN and commentator for WABC TV in New York. He has written for The Nation, Whole Earth Review, Science Digest, Penthouse, and newspapers in the United States, Japan, and Australia, where he was political commentator and parliamentary bureau chief for 9 TV network. His 1991 article, quote, A Beginner's Guide to the BNL-BCCI Bank Scandal, was widely republished and voted one of the top 10 untold stories of the year by Censored, and later one of the top 10 untold stories of the last 10 years by Unto Reader. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to Conversations and to Manhattan Network. It's good to see you again. You've been busy. I wonder if you could maybe take a brief time and share. We touched on some of your background, but you've been very busy and you got a lot we want to talk about right of the moment. But share a little bit of your own background. You're originally out of...
originally from Australia.
Right.
And came here 20-odd years ago, and worked at ABC as a cultural affairs commentator because they couldn't work out what to do with my accent. So they said, we finally decided on the title, and the title really meant doing movie reviews and theater. I did that for about 5 years.
Yeah, you did, You got involved a little bit with CNN.
So I went back to Australia, then came back here. The CNN started, and I was there at the beginning,
at the beginning,
creation.
with Mr. Turner himself.
Yes, indeed. And
that was a feisty, intellectually challenging time with that coming of a new news network.
Well, it was an exciting time, and I remember Reid who was really the creator of it. Ted Turner gave him the check and said, "Can you do it?" And Reid said, "Yes."
Bob Whistler was there too.
And Bob Whistler.
Yeah.
And he said the agreement was, he said, but you stay out of the studio to Ted Turner. So
you were
Turner
deprived
said, okay.
of the mouth of the South. Huh?
And they went ahead with it. I remember about 2 or 3 days after they actually went to air the first time, Schoenfeld came round and he said to me, he said, "Do you think this thing's going to work?" And I said, "It couldn't be stopped even if you wanted to."
That's good. Yeah.
And so it was the beginning of the 24-hour news cycle on TV.
Yeah.
And for good or ill, it's there now, and there is a lot more rolling now with Fox News.
There's some more going on Fox News. You got WMBC.
About as much as the market can take, I think, right now.
You think it is about as much as the market can take?
Well,
we've got C-SPAN on the side.
Arguably more.
Stuff. Yeah.
From a commercial point of view, some people argue that there are too many news channels.
Oh, really?
Now,
Already, yeah.
As a result of which, the commercial competition this doesn't apply to C-SPAN, because C-SPAN is
a different breed of cat.
Is above and beyond the audience size. They don't care.
God
They're like the
C-SPAN.
BBC.
Yeah, that's
They're not
good,
bound to an audience size. They're not bound to the commercial requirements.
Yeah, I can see the news networks already going toward the soft stuff. I mean,
this is what's called the rush to the bottom.
Yeah,
because they become fiercely competitive. To survive, they must. In order to survive, they must do what they need to do to hold together and hold audiences. And while they once were able to do, quite sustained, serious programming, they really can't afford to do that anymore because they're going to be beaten by the others who put on, singing and dancing and juggling, and soft news and screaming news, and that sort of drives everything down to the bottom. And you see that happening now.
In the commercial
context,
world. Yeah. And the PBS, what do you think of PBS and what
PBS
is able
struggles
to bring
on, but it too is making the necessary compromises because
funding.
Well, the funding. It comes down to the funding. That is why in some ways, certainly in the United States, C-SPAN is unique.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Because it is not dependent upon the size of its audience at all. The only comparable English language television service is the
BBC.
The BBC.
Yeah, right. That's right. And it does. And they put on a thing the other day, and they I don't know who's involved. I guess, you know, Brian Lamb's been there from the beginning. He's there and the people. But they put on things that, from a certain standpoint, are controversial in some people's mind.
Yes.
They put on Scott Ritter the other day, reading his piece to the Iraqi television, which ran completely counter to this full-court press toward war that the Bush administration is advancing. And they did that in the face of that, and they were able to do that and not lose track of the ability to put on some programming relevant that is going to be seen as irrelevant by some mighty important market forces and political forces, don't you think?
C-SPAN is like
How
another...
do they do that, I wonder?
Well, it's like another government. It really is. And
do you think we'd be better served if we had 8 C-SPANs?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
So more the better.
Has Brian hit upon something that is really significant in terms of broadcast future,
Profoundly.
particularly if we start linking it to the fact that we are now beginning to seriously stream important programming and a connection with the internet?
He was once, Lamb was once asked about, so what's happened to this 500-channel universe everybody was talking about? He said, it may well be happening, but it may be happening on the internet. And I think he's right.
When did you say that? When?
About 2 or 3 years ago.
Only, yeah, 2 years ago.
But he's seen the direction.
I did a program, I said it last week with another guest, and I did a program way back in about 1973 or something like that, and I was then thinking, because we're now in public access, okay? This is public access television, which is another element in terms of television production, which we, of course, here think is worth giving some consideration to and so forth, but we had public access, but they had the cable who was competing with over-the-air broadcast. Then we had the Sloan Commission report, and it was called the Cable, the Medium of Abundance. That was the Sloan Commission subtitle to their report on the cable. And so it was possible to have different kinds of programming other than strictly market-driven, advertising-supported standards and so forth, such as you outlined. And I was having a program with a fellow down in Washington, and I was saying to him, well, we got this possibility of all these programming possibilities other than just, you know, market-driven notions and so forth. I think we ought to start a channel where we present the world leadership. I was thinking the world intellectual leadership as the programming content, so that the folks would have a channel to which they could repair to get a sense of what's going on in terms of the evolution of universal consciousness and this sort of thing. And I had in mind Buckminster Fuller and Marshall McLuhan and Irwin Thompson, and some people, and a couple bankers or something. And then he said, that's a good idea, Harold. I think that's a good idea. Good luck, fella. You know, we're warming our hands over a cup of coffee. And then he said, well, I'm thinking of starting a channel, and I'm thinking of calling it Cable Satellite Public Affairs Network. And that was Brian Lamb. Way back, it must have been 73 or something like that.
Really?
He was just
back
getting
then,
started.
Yeah.
Or 74. Whenever it was that it was just getting started, I was thinking of a leadership channel, intellectual leadership, and he was thinking of he's pulled it off. I still think we could use a channel that would present the true systems understanding, evolution of universal consciousness, intellectual leadership, systems understanding of what's going on as the programming content, rather than a lot of these flacks that take up the airwaves now.
I think if you were unashamedly intellectually elitist, and in a sense it is, that would not be a bad thing, and I think it would be would fulfill a great and important need.
I have a hard time coming up with the criteria by which we decide who our leaders are. I'm not sure we have a system for doing that now.
No.
That's adequate to what the future calls for?
Well, Brian Lamb again does a program every weekend, the 48 hours of books.
Yeah, oh, isn't it wonderful?
And it's a wonderful program.
Now, you can't get out of the house.
Now, there are more books and more writers around, so, you know, you could have a channel that just was not the weekend. It could go all week.
Oh, sure.
And the mechanism of doing it is there.
Yeah. The technology is evolving.
Yes. It's not a problem of technology. It's a problem of economics.
Yeah.
Financial support, because it's still an expensive medium. I mean, C-SPAN is $30 million a year, and for years now.
Only, I would say.
Only?
I would add quickly. Only.
Only.
When you think, what's that? A couple of runs of Friends or something?
Well, the cheapest other network, I believe, is the it gets about 100 million, I think, is the Channel 1 here in New York. But you know, people, I hear a lot of people in the so-called progressive community say, you know, we've got to start a new network. I say, good. You don't even talk about it unless you're ready to put up $250 million. That's what CNN had at the beginning. That's what Turner put up, $250 million as an experiment.
Yeah, that was in cable.
And of course, much more expensive now. Murdoch has poured the better part of $1 billion into Fox News.
Just here in Fox News?
Because he spent a lot of money. Yeah, he spent a lot of money paying the cable stations to take it. So that was part of the economic. You know. So creating a network, you know, the equipment is there, but a lot more is involved to make it happen.
Yeah, the equipment is there, and then also, what is it? Fill me in, Lou, because you follow these things and so forth. The mergers and acquisitions and the consolidation, the kind of thing that. Who was it, Ben Bagdikian used to say, that the media is getting down to where it's 5 or 6 companies that control 85% of what everybody sees or something like that.
Right, it's a problem.
Is this an alarming pattern that's going on worldwide?
Yes, and the counter force that's operating there, I think, is the Internet.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Again, I am entranced with the Internet. It's the most important thing that's happened in my lifetime. I think it's the most important thing, as I think I said last time on this program, I think it's the most important thing in human affairs since the capture of fire.
Well, and, that's a big loop,
And it is certain the political implications of it are enormous, which I hope we can get into a little later, because some of the things I'm working on now would be impossible without the Internet. And there is a whole subcultural news informational journalistic enterprise now that is encompassing and leaving far behind the mainstream media. If you want to know what's going on, you won't find out in the mainstream media.
You will not. You cannot.
You will not.
No, you will. But you will.
You can find out. You will find out first on the Internet.
Okay, but you will find out what the public is finding out by monitoring the media, which is an important part politically or otherwise in terms of practicality, particularly.
When a program becomes sufficiently popular, you have to watch it as an act of sociological research.
Yeah, and particularly if you're trying to do something real in the real world. But the leading edge in terms of understanding is out there in the Internet. I wonder if you have a division between, let's say, and we have, if I may suggest now, we have a government now that has, at the head of the government, the president and so forth, they are a group of what are generally called neoconservatives. And there seems to have been the capturing politically and so forth of the political economic mechanisms of this country and to a large extent the world and so forth. People who are very much in a certain sense tied into a fundamentalist economic philosophy of market fundamentalism. This is a term that is used, and it's being played out in various ways. Huge tax cut to the rich and supply side, this sort of thing. Also the thing in Iraq, the thing that's going on. But it's very much geared toward the market. We here in public access, or in certain aspects of the Internet, if I may say so, there's Internet including pop-up ads and all kinds of commercial applications and selling possibilities that's commercially oriented, and that's part of it. But then there's also the non-commercial oriented aspects of the Internet. And we'd like to see, I think that we here in public access, for whatever it's worth, we say, we're strictly here, is no cost, and there's no money to be made. It's strictly non-commercial. Do you think there's a subversive quality to either, let's say, John Philip Barlow's use of the Internet, or the idea of non-commercial use, or the Internet being invaded by market forces, just as there could be in terms of television invading our little realm of public access? We see a connection between non-commercial connection to the Internet and the early example of access that got started about 30 years ago in terms of the cable universe.
Well, yes, but the comparison fails because there is an inherent limit to the amount of space, the number of channels that are available on even cable. Whereas, in fact, what is distinctive, uniquely so, about the Internet is that it is limitless.
Quite literally so.
Quite literally, limitless. There's a lot of misleading talk about, you know, the cacophony of voices and the confusion and the chaos. It's all too much. We're overwhelmed. Not really. Any more than a library, the New York Public Library. In a sense, the amount of information there is overwhelming, enormous. But you use a library in the sense of a pull medium. You go in and pull out what you want.
That's right.
It isn't something that is pushed to you, which television does. Television pushes its program at the viewer. Whereas with the Internet, you go into the Internet and pull out.
Now, the Internet and the television...
And there is no limit to the amount of material that can be posted and distributed on the Internet.
And both now it's coming into multimedia with the streaming. It's becoming multimedia. That bridge is being made. So the bridge between, it used to be the Office of Telecommunications and Computing that Henry Geller headed up and so forth, and now it's all blending into one convergence or something like that. And it has great implications.
Finally will be subsumed by the digital world, by the Internet.
By the digital world. Yeah, we're beginning to go, television's beginning to go that way. You have nonlinear editing, all kinds of things. It's democratizing in a very real sense. There's great hope in that. And also, you have, was it Norbert Wiener, I think, who used to say that information overload within a system, if you're thinking systems.
It goes from data collection to pattern recognition.
Yeah, but it goes from information overload permits pattern recognition so that you can see patterns like the dots of a painting. Instead of looking at the dots, you can see the whole painting. So we're beginning to get an overview of what it is that's going on in terms of the technological evolution of events in this part of the universe.
That's chaos evolving up into a higher level of order.
It seems, it seems. And also that it's at a particularly important moment now as we go through this. Qualitatively different after 200,000 years of our being here. This thing is going exponential now.
That's right.
So it's the technological change that's happening, and it has political, economic, and sociological implications that should be understood better than they are by who we are now calling our leaders.
That's right. I mean,
do we need a new brand of leadership?
Even now as we speak.
That's more comprehensively inclusive of everything, rather than be so special interest toward one
all the political structures of the past are essentially, in a sense, they're almost obsolete now.
All institutions, in a certain sense, are, or must be subsumed within a new pattern of understanding. And where are we getting that visionary leadership or visionary understanding from? We don't get it from the political and business leadership, do we?
No.
No, that seems to be a rear guard action they're doing.
Yes.
So
they're resisting it.
So it's a problem, in a certain sense.
But a new kind of leadership and a new set of leaders, a new set of elites are emerging.
They are. And where would you see the elites emerging? I mean, what are they? They're people that are where? I mean, where do you see them? You find them on the Internet? Okay.
I mean, you mentioned Philip
Barlow. Yeah.
Barlow is probably the best example.
You think?
Offhand, yes. You know, there's some very inspiring minds around.
Stuart Brand. Stuart Brand comes to mind, Now, I always compared to Bucky Fuller. I always thought Bucky Fuller had a comprehensive reading of things that can't be duplicated by anybody else.
I think both Barlow and Brand and their milieu also paid tribute, I think, to
Marshall McLuhan.
And to Gregory Bateson.
To Gregory Bateson, Steps to an Ecology of Mind.
I mean, William Owen Thompson, you mentioned earlier, William Owen Thompson says that we live in the post-Bateson era.
Post-Batesian,
Since the death of Bateson. He thought Bateson was the best mind of the last century.
He did, There were a number of people who did, with the topology, with the you know, that kind of thing. He was a thing. Now in the economics. The economics are one area that it seems to me we need to have some sort of a revisitation of our economic philosophy. One of the things Fuller used to talk about, I don't want to get too far, is that we crossed the line where you know, we've had throughout the whole human experience that the condition of scarcity. Now we're talking about media or communication abundance.
Abundance, yes.
That could apply to material world in a very real sense. We have enough. We have a capability of providing enough food, technologically augmented. We have enough to produce. We have the knowledge base to get enough water. We have a knowledge base and a capability that our financial and political economic systems don't allow us to realize what we're capable of doing, and we need some sort of a new economic system other than, I don't know, Milton Friedman or Schumpeter or the systems that inform our political leadership now.
We have a polity of abundance from an earlier age now in an age of emerging abundance.
Yes, but that's a big transformation.
It's a big swirl.
If you transcend scarcity as an ontological or epistemological reality, there's a big change going on that isn't picked up on by the traditional patterns that are amortizing. It's like a line I read the other day. We live with what history has allowed rather than what the future demands.
That's very good.
We don't have a vision. Or do we lack vision in terms of our broadly conceived general political or otherwise leadership?
Well, I don't know who this first person plural we is. I don't know. For example, back to Bateson for a moment. Bateson was once asked what were the two most important events that had taken place in his century, last century. And he had a very interesting and surprising answer. He said, one was the Treaty of Versailles. And he said that really was...
After the First World War.
After the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles was a major turning point and a major blunder. And we've suffered from it enormously since. It gave... he said he remembers at the time, it was the only time he saw his father lose his temper. And when he read the Times of London report on the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, he hurled the Times of London across the room and said, "Fools!
Yes.
Victors must be honorable. There'll be another war in 20 years.
Yes,
and there was. So it gave rise to Hitler.
Yeah.
That gave rise to the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
That gave rise to you know, the kind of world we have today in many ways. The other thing Bateson said
what was the second?
Was the development of cybernetics.
That's interesting, yeah.
And digital and cybernetic thought are flowing out of that now.
Yeah.
So yes, he saw the really important changing thing. And of course, you know, the internet has now brought that the cybernetic change into the fore in a way that really is revolutionizing everything.
And is relentless.
And it
is
unstoppable.
relentless. It is absolutely, it is L-shaped.
Unstoppable.
Here comes nanotechnology, molecular computing, all the surpassing Moore's law, all of these kind of things that's just coming in and yet we still have all these particularly vexing problems that we see as we turn on the television, and they are there, and we still have one of the things that is very real, and I know you followed it very carefully, and I respect that very much, is the fact that a lot of this technological capability that we've developed is potentially destructive. A good deal of it has been led by war making, and the atomic thermonuclear capability, we apparently crossed the line where we have the ability, we couldn't do it in the Second World War, we have the ability, if the weapons, or is this still the case? I wanted to ask you, I just reread Jonathan Schell's Fate of the Earth. But have we crossed the line historically where if by some miscalculation a single individual could set off a guns of August kind of thing or something like that, the weapons were unleashed, we destroy the whole species? We crossed that line apparently, according to Joshua Lederberg, along about 1970.
Right.
I mean, within our lifetime.
Right.
That's a big qualitative transformation against which we're positing the idea that there is an evolving abundance as a thing. But is that still the case? Or now with the downfall of the Soviet Union and our George Bush making treaties to, I mean, are we now safe from the nuclear holocaust of destroying the species?
Absolutely not. In fact, in some ways it's almost more dangerous because when there were just the two major powers, at least they were in control in a way that certainly in the Soviet Union they're not anymore. There are hundreds of bombs unaccounted for in the Soviet Union.
Tons of plutonium.
And plutonium slopping around the world. We've entered a century with nuclear bombs strewn all around the planet. And
interlinking alliances, of loose alliances.
That's right.
And tremendous sense of we can't possibly suffer this indignity that's going to be, you know, and you got India, Pakistan, and that kind of thing. Yeah, but go ahead.
And, for example, the United Nations Commission on Disarmament, the CD, where these things over the years have been discussed, has closed down because of complete lack of progress and a complete lack of cooperation, mainly from the United States. And with the Bush administration now clearly hostile to the United Nations, abandoning treaties all over the place, ready to resume nuclear testing, refusing to sign on to the CTB, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, and refusing to cooperate with the United Nations on nuclear disarmament. The Committee on Disarmament has now, it hasn't quite been dismantled, but it is closed down.
Very disquiet.
And it is an unnerving thing.
So that Damoclean sword is still there.
Right, it's still there.
It isn't. It isn't that's all over now that the Soviet Union's been defeated. And yet that seems to be, it doesn't seem to come up. 1982, we got 1 million people in Central Park out against the freeze thing. But now that seems not to come up.
Well, everyone has assumed the Cold War has ended the threat. It has not.
It has not.
Even
it's
as
exacerbated
we sit here now. There are, around the planet, 2,000 nuclear bombs on missiles, fully fueled, their gyroscopes whirring away, ready for launch in 90 seconds.
Oh, boy.
Carl Sagan used to say, the only reason that we are able to sit here and talk now is because 20 minutes ago, the Russian leadership decided not to launch nuclear weapons.
Yeah, fun. Yeah,
and the only reason that the Russians are there now is because 20 minutes ago, we decided not to launch our nuclear weapons. But they're there trembling on these these nuclear
hair
triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but now they have cut back, and now also
they've cut back on the number of bombs, but not on the number on hair trigger.
And if
and nobody's talking about taking them off hair.
No, they
trigger.
just passed that thing, but they're going to just put them in silos where they can come out again in a
yes,
you know,
but
off here.
But that doesn't take. They're the ones that they're the ones that they're taking out of service. But the ones that are on the missiles are still on hair trigger.
Well, what about
4,000 around the world? 2,000.
Well, there used to be
I said 2,000. 2,000
Didn't
Russian.
There used to be something like 50,000, or is that the
no,
total number?
No,
of
the
missiles?
total, the highest number of weapons in the world was 60,000.
It was 60,000.
That was during the Reagan era. It hit 60,000.
Yeah, right.
Now there are about 35,000
now
nuclear weapons in the world now. Most of them are not on missiles. Those that are on, but there are still 2,000 on missiles, on hair trigger in the United States, and another 2,000 on missiles, on hair trigger in the Soviet Union, in Russia.
In Russia, and it's only the Russia.
It's still a Cold War posture.
They got that, and then there are these other missiles that are behind. So the existential question is, in a certain sense, we were trying to destroy ourselves as best we could in the Second World War. We dropped a bomb on Nagasaki, didn't we, and on Hiroshima and so forth. But we were impotent. We were protected in our impotence. But that existential challenge that we can, as Jonathan Shell, God bless him, brings out so well in that Fate of the Earth, that what you're facing into is oblivion.
Right.
It's not just destroying the tribe in the other village, or the good guys will win out over the bad guys, or something like that. But it's the end of the whole evolutionary experience called mankind.
Right.
And we're still in that situation.
Right. I know you quarreled with me once when I wrote in a piece in Nation that if there were an accident when we were coming into Y2K, if things really went bad there, and a substantial portion of the nuclear material in the world was unleashed, that we really could return the planet to the insects.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I wouldn't have argued.
No,
I wouldn't have argued. Not me. It wouldn't have been me. No, because I've been concerned.
You in public?
No. I've been. No, that's quite all right. No, I've been.
Oh, I thought you raised. Well, somebody. Forgive me. I'm now
somebody else.
here.
But I was.
I had said, or someone said to me that, oh well, there were certain species of fish.
I have. No, I said that. I heard people will say we can destroy life. I don't think we can destroy life. Because there are life forms that smokers deep in ocean deeps that aren't even photosynthesis, and evolution would pick up, because evolution is an even more precious liaison in the universe than humanity.
Yeah, the humans would be gone.
Yeah, the
human experiment would be discarded.
Yeah.
And the things that would, the insect life would be most secure.
And now we're at launch, and now we have these other things. India, Pakistan, China's building. Now we have a thing in the Middle East where they have that. What about the idea, the argumentation? How is it that it's in the public psyche that now that we have won, that the weapons are all, the real destructive capability is now in our hands, and we are the good guys and would never do it, so that the world is safe if only we could extend our power even more than we have. And in fact, it looks like Mr. Paul Wolfowitz and these people who want to extend into Iraq really have the idea that now is the time to make a full court press and bring American hegemony to the whole world in order to forestall the possibility that some of this cacophonous stuff coming from other parts of the world will be cut off at the pass, as it were, and that we will be able to bring the kind of security that we need. What about those kind of arguments? Gregory
Bateson addressed them in a long and eloquent letter he wrote when he resigned from the, I think it was the University of Santa Cruz.
He was at Santa Cruz.
Because they had decided to become involved in associating with nuclear research for the Pentagon, and he resigned in protest. And he referred to nuclear addiction that the nuclear powers really have become addicted to the idea of the nuclear weapons, and it's going to be very hard to break that addiction.
Well,
I don't think it's going to happen with the present administration in America.
I don't see how it could, do you?
No.
I don't see how it possibly
No.
could. I think it's very dangerous.
No, it would require, things can happen often much more quickly than people
Yes,
realize.
that's true, yeah.
And a change of administration, somebody like, oh, I don't know, Trudeau. He was one of the first modern political leaders.
Yeah, Canada.
And I think...
He had McLuhan in his court.
That's right. I mean, he was, first of all, he was an intellectual, which is very rare in government. And he brought to it a real vision, and that was unique and still is extremely rare. I can't think of anybody, any world leader today, in that intellectual caliber.
In that particular caliber.
He was a wonderful flash.
Well.
And but somebody like that, if they were to come forward, if they were to, by accident or whatever, become the president, they could do wondrous things.
You think they could?
They could.
Okay, they could within the... Yeah, but could they ever become the president, or could they, or are they going to be able to have a chance to do it?
Very difficult in the United States.
And yet the United States is a superpower beyond anything since Rome even dreamed of.
An Australian Prime Minister once said to me that nobody gets to be president of the United States without the approval of the Mafia and the Council on Foreign Relations.
Well, the Council on Foreign Relations has a lot of
that's
powerful
probably
interest.
True. Yeah.
Well, that's probably powerful, true, that there are people that have these stake in the historically inherited patterns. And if something was going to come that was truly revolutionary, if the thing of transcending, if we realize that that at an epistemological or an abstract level we have transcended scarcity or something, that would be a thing, a notion that would be so unsettling to the traditional patterns. James Joyce had
resistance.
James Joyce had Daedalus say, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken, that we're awakening from something that is so inconvenient to the architecture and the structure and the thinking and everything, including, most significantly, I would say, economic theory, that it would not be able to be seen in any kind of way as ever to be... we would need a new economic theory outside of that which has informed all of our political leadership up to the present. We don't have that. Marx doesn't work. Schumpeter doesn't work. Van Hayek doesn't work. Milton Friedman doesn't work, except that you have these neocons who think that the market fundamentalism does work. Now, they have their notion of what it is that would do that. They have the bit in their teeth and so forth, but none of those systems would work. They're all based on a particular theory of human beings and the relationship to the economy and so forth that is not allowing us...
It works for a while for them, the way for a while Enron worked for them.
Want to talk about that? Yeah, well, Enron is very much involved in that, because the neocon is not only, the neocon connection is not only geopolitical on the international scale, links to right-wing Likud and so forth, going back 20, 30 years and so forth. They had this view, but it's also got an economic philosophy that's behind it, and it's very market fundamentalist oriented, and it's
fundamentalist at many levels.
Fundamentalist at many levels, and they've also got a very strong glint in their eye that they have some sort of an ultimate truth that they can bring to the world, and it's dangerous. And you've been writing on that.
Right.
If I may, on the administration and on some of the activities around 9/11 and so forth?
9/11 was, profound in many ways, and in some of which have not been fully discussed in the American media, certainly, and some of them are being discussed in detail, again, only on the Internet. But if you prowl the Internet, you can come up with some amazingly interesting insights. And you can also do checks and verification in a way that was not possible before without the Internet. So it's resulted in a wholly new set of scholars. It's also resulted in some insanity.
Yeah, well, that's pattern recognition.
That requires a certain amount of judgment sometimes.
Yeah.
But a good journalist, for a journalist, it is a tool beyond the wildest dreams.
And even the existence of itself allows for
Right.
a filtering process
Exactly.
through the people that might want to select,
Exactly.
because the word gets around. And you say, oh, that's nonsense, and
Yeah.
somebody tells you it's not.
Yes.
So it's not so bad to
It
leave
is
it
open
up
to continuing critique.
Isn't that a good idea?
And this is-
Isn't
this
that
is one-
feedback that we want?
It is a process of endless refinement, which, by the way, is a good definition of civilization itself.
You think?
A
Yeah,
process
that is, yeah.
of endless refinement.
Yeah, right.
And
Okay.
and that is happening certainly. Well, you talk about Enron. Enron is probably very tightly bound up in what happened in 9/11.
I want to show a book, if I may.
Yes, please.
Let's let them look what this is. It's a book that you have done a great deal of research on. It's called now Forbidden Truth. And tell me the author's names pronounced.
Well, no, I probably mispronounced them. Jean-Charles Brizard and Julien Basquet.
Okay, France, right.
They are two very good.
Now published in
fine.
English.
This is
Okay.
the first. Yes, it's a very quick translation. It's been put together pretty swiftly. Somebody
no
said
index,
Somebody said
unfortunately.
somebody said it's the worst written book this year.
Yeah.
Maybe, but the content overrules everything
You've
else.
written a long, interesting review of
I've
that book
examined it
and
pretty
tied it
closely.
into political development.
And there are some. It is quite clear that it is the 9/11 had its origins in a tussle for oil. That the war in Afghanistan is about oil. That the war in Iraq, for Iraq, what's going on toward Iraq, is about oil. But not only about oil. There is the whole lust of empire, and people, the people involved in it are linked together in strange and interesting ways. The people who were pushing essentially a secret and illegal foreign policy before 9/11 to try to get control of the oil fields in Afghanistan were Nitinol was the organization that was leading this, and their feasibility study was being done by Enron.
It was actually the oil was probably
Enron had a $100 million contract.
$100 million
To produce a feasibility study on building this pipeline.
a pipeline through Afghanistan.
And they were, they were
being-
negotiating with the Taliban.
Yeah,
They
and-
were doing everything. They were bringing them to they're bringing them to Texas. They were wining them and dining them and taking them lap dancing and
Taliban.
bribing them and doing everything they could to ensure that they would get it. At the last minute, something went wrong. And these...
Now, if I make
Sure.
just one quick thing, the oil is in the Caspian,
Yes.
and they were going to build a pipeline through oil.
Right.
The oil's not in Afghanistan.
No.
You said it was
They
oil,
wanted to get
but
it
they wanted to get an oil
before the
line.
Russians get it.
Before the Russians.
And
did
they
it.
wanted to bring it out through Pakistan
Right.
to the ports.
And Unicor was involved in that, and Enron, and they bought properties out there.
Oh, Enron-
and they had a
Enron
huge
still
investment. Enron
Enron still has the most barren, desolate land
in Tashkent or in
the Caspian area.
In Caspian, yeah.
But if they'd been able to build their pipe, it would be priceless. So all of this was going on secretly, with the help of elements of the CIA and the State Department and the Defense Department and the FBI.
Why can't the oil come out through Turkey, or why can't it come out through Iran, or why can't it come out some other way other than through the route
It
that
could come
Enron
out
was
through Iran.
pushing?
The most secure and simple and financially viable way is to take it straight through to Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, and
And
this
th-
is what Enron had.
that's
a great,
what the whole-
Kenneth Lay had a big investment
That's
in
right.
the billions.
And when the deal fell through, for whatever reason, it may be that the Taliban was asking too much money. It may be that the Taliban never intended to do it anyway.
They had
For whatever reason.
reportedly they had asked them to hand over bin Laden.
They
but that they were-
they were almost prepared to do that,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But when it fell through, someone lost their temper. And the threat was made, comply with our deal or we will give you, comply with what we want and you will get a carpet of gold. If you don't, you'll suffer a carpet of bombs.
Yes, we've heard that.
And this
yeah.
carpet of gold, carpet
And
of
this-
bombs threat.
Is that validated? I mean, is that the source of that?
Oh,
or
there are enormously
I
long
mean, in
articles
this
about
book.
it.
Yeah.
But it seems to be that was pretty close to
Yeah.
the quote.
quote,
The
and
suggestion
the reality.
the
that was the
suggestion
reality.
now is that the person who made that remark was slightly drunk.
No, people
Whatever, it led then to a policy of preemption by the Al-Qaeda forces, that they said, all right, if they're going to get us, we'll get them first. In fact, the day before 9/11 was the day that the plans for the attack on Afghanistan was put on Bush's desk. 24 hours later, 9/11.
My God.
And these people have been doing monumental research.
Absolutely, yeah, I know. Yeah.
And you know, there are questions now that they have helped uncover that have not been answered. In fact, they haven't even been asked.
Well, you asked them well. You've written an article that you're going to be making available?
Yes, and to
an
deal,
incredibly informative, well-written
to deal with
article.
some of the unanswered questions.
Yes, right.
That have been raised and adumbrated, as it were, foreshadowed by their book here, because but it goes beyond that.
Yeah.
And it has led to some of the most fanciful, extreme, and sometimes hysterical conspiracy theories. But that doesn't mean that there was not a conspiracy.
That's right. Just because there's
That's
some,
right.
Yeah.
And there are supposedly now all sorts of investigations into 9/11. As someone once said, if they can get you asking the right question, if they can get you asking the wrong questions, it doesn't matter what the answers are.
That's right. That's right.
And a lot of the questions in these so-called 9/11 investigations now underway in Washington are involved in asking the wrong questions.
Yeah.
No one is asking, well, some of the questions that really should be explored. What, for example, accounts for the extraordinary behavior of George Bush in the hours immediately, in the minutes immediately after the attack on 9/11?
Now,
this has been raised by some of the women who are the wives of the victims. They've formed a very impressive group.
Yeah,
and they're active in Washington now.
They're going to have an investigation in
This
Congress.
is one of the questions that they have asked. And in fact, there is
the whole stance of the yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there is a clip of Bush addressing the school children in Florida as he was told that the second plane had struck the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
And that the country was under attack.
Yeah.
And the question a lot of people are asking is, why did he continue for the next 20 minutes to sit discussing a story about a pet goat with the children? Is that the appropriate role for the commander-in-chief when he has just learned that the country is under attack and that there is now underway the most extreme aircraft crisis in history?
Yeah, and you brought in a piece of tape
There is
at the moment that Andrew Card gave him the notice, and he knew we were under attack, and that we're going to run it. Why don't we run it? Shall we run it now?
Well, let me background to it.
Yeah.
It first appeared online on the Booker School website. That was at the Booker School in Florida. And they put this footage on their website, and it was very quickly taken down.
It was. Yeah.
However, some people had already seized it, and it is now back up online.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of traffic to it.
Yeah.
And as you'll see, that it is, some people regard it as political dynamite.
Well, it could be, and the thing is, we're going to look at a couple minutes.
Yeah,
just 2.5 minutes or so, and it's got some of the talk that's actually going on in the room.
In fact, if viewers are interested in this, they may be interested in putting a tape into their tape machines, because this may not be long available on the internet. One doesn't know.
Possibly so. That's a good general idea.
So,
you get a lot of tape to record it before they're taken down. But this is reflective of a thing that went on for some 20-odd minutes, not just the 2 minutes that you're going to see.
No.
But let's run that tape.
Let's say the actual tape is picked up about 30 seconds before Andrew Card appears on the left of the screen to come in and say very briefly to the president, you don't hear him, but there's a little caption, second tower struck, second plane hits the World Trade Center. Card tells him another plane has struck the World Trade Center. He already knew one plane had struck. That had happened 18 minutes earlier. And he says, a second plane has struck the World Trade Center. America is under attack. And then the camera just stays relentlessly on the children and the school teacher reading the class and to Bush just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah, right.
It's bizarre.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll run that. Let's set that up and run that in the studio. It runs a couple minutes. So we're talking with Kevin Saunders, and this is a tape, and then we'll come back and follow up on
some
this
other questions.
and some other questions and so
Yes.
forth. So if you could set that up and run that tape in the studio now, then please. Thank you.
What word? Yes, smile. Read these words the fast way. Get ready. Smile. Yes, smile. Get ready. More. Yes, more. Get ready. Light. Yes, light. Get ready. Light. Yes, light. Get ready. No. Yes. Look at the letter at the end and remember the sound. Lane. Yes, lane. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Or do your speaker reader up from under your seat. Open your book up to lesson 60 on page 153. At the count of 3, everyone should be on page 153. If the yellow paper is going to bother you, drop it. Thank you. Everybody touch the title of your story. Fingers under the title. Get ready to read the title, The Fast Way. We're waiting for one member. Thank you. Fingers under the title of the story. Get ready. Yes, the cat go. Fingers under the first word of the story. Get ready to read the story the fast way. Get ready. Go on. Go on. Try it again. Get ready from the beginning of that sentence. Get ready. Go on. Good job. Go on. Let's clean that up. Get ready. Travel's butt. Get ready. Go on.
Exactly right. Oh, these are great readings.
Yes, they are.
Very impressive. Thank you also very much for showing me your reading skills. I bet they practiced it, right?
Oh, yes. That's a requirement. Homework. Reading homework.
Reading more than they watch TV?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Anybody do that? Read more than you watch TV? Oh, that's great. Very good. Very important to practice. Thanks for having it. Very impressive.
Well, that's really interesting. That you know, that's really an interesting piece that he just let that thing go. Like
It has
that.
given rise to some quite extraordinary speculation. The most extreme perhaps being the allegation that, well, the reason he was not surprised is because he knew it was going to happen. A good rule in journalism is never attribute to conspiracy anything that can be explained by stupidity.
Yeah,
Or,
right.
in this case, perhaps fear or shock or being overwhelmed by the import of the information and simply freezing or into a sort of denial.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, however, it does question the competence of this man to be the leader of the free world in the nuclear age.
And it did. We had it just. It had the noise of the children. I've seen this on C-SPAN. This footage. It was a card and so forth. But I hadn't heard the kids talking and all that sort of thing. And this went on for 20
Went
minutes.
on for 20 minutes.
And the defenses weren't scrambled, and there were things to be done.
That's right.
And so forth. And there's all that. That's a question.
That's another
brought
question.
up.
Why were there no planes in the air
Yeah.
to do something about this? That's supposed to be normal routine
No,
procedure,
no.
even without presidential authority.
Now, what do we do with this? Because the article that you've written in the excerpt in this book and so forth goes into some incredible allegations. We begin to bring in the Carlyle group. We begin to bring in Harkin. We begin to bring in Halliburton, Mr. Cheney, and a lot of other people that were
The whole
involved in a
thing
big,
is
massive
drenched in oil.
drenched in oil, right?
And it's the power of big oil is everywhere to be found in this. And there are other things, perhaps even more sinister and strange than that film that we've just seen. One of the most important questions that has not been pursued is, why is it that the former head of the Pakistani Secret Service was revealed to have sent a check or mailed a $100,000 payment.
A wire.
A wire
Transfer of money.
of $100,000 to Chief Pilot Atto,
Muhammad Atta.
the man who flew the first plane.
Now, did the authors bring this out?
No.
No.
This was brought up after this book came out.
I see.
And it was brought up by an article in the front page of the Times of India.
Now, has this been validated?
Yes.
Yeah, been validated that $100,000 was wired to Muhammad Atta where?
From Pakistan.
Pakistan
to Florida.
When?
About a week before 9/11.
And it was sent by whom?
Now, here's a very interesting. It's sent by a man called Saeed Sheikh.
Yeah.
Now, Saeed Sheikh is a terrorist. He spent a lot of time in jail.
He's been arrested.
He was, well, the sequence was he was in jail for terrorist activities in India. He was released after some Al-Qaeda-related terrorists hijacked an Indian airliner. They killed one of the passengers. They threatened to kill everybody. And a deal was struck whereby 3 Pakistani terrorists related to Al-Qaeda, connected to Bin Laden, were to be released and were released. And one of them was Saeed Sheikh. Saeed Sheikh was the top aide of the former head of the Pakistani Secret Service, General Mahmood.
Good grief.
Now, General Mahmood, after he was outed by the Times of India for this $100,000 payment to the terrorist pilot, Mahmood retired. I mean, he wasn't arrested. He wasn't seized. He wasn't charged. He just retired.
I heard Sheikh, and then I heard Mahmood.
Yeah.
Mahmood was involved in
authorized the payment, and the actual payment was done by Sheikh.
Oh, all right, good.
By Sheikh Saeed.
Got it. And it went to Muhammad
Now,
Atta
Saeed
from
is
Pakistan.
the former terrorist. Saeed now is in a Pakistani prison after having been charged with involvement in the kidnapping and beheading of Daniel Pearl.
Right, okay.
Now, there are a lot of dots to be connected here, surely. Further to which, General Mahmood was in and out of Washington for several weeks before 9/11, and indeed on the morning of 9/11, he was having breakfast with Senator Graham, who is the head of the intelligence service.
Yeah, Florida.
So why has not this been discussed? Why has nobody asked why or what or how?
Why possibly hasn't it been discussed, and what are some of the possible implications
Well,
of that?
it's generally thought by people who have probed this that the government doesn't want to touch this. The American government doesn't want to touch it. The Pakistani government doesn't want to touch it because it would reveal the incredible links that have been built up over the years between the CIA and the Pakistani Secret Service, which in fact is a creation of the CIA.
And Saudi money.
And Saudi money. And the Taliban.
And Mr. Cheney?
Well,
Halliburton.
Halliburton
has the contract for the...
is making a fortune out of
and
this.
Do they have... Who has the contract to lay the pipeline? Is Halliburton involved in that?
Halliburton is involved in that.
They're involved heavily?
Sure, very heavily.
Lead in that? Or just one of many?
One of many.
Oh, yeah, right. But it could involve Mr. Cheney.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah,
and they don't want to raise this. They don't want the pipeline story to be uncovered. They don't want the $100,000 payment to be uncovered.
With names and numbers.
With the names and the people and their links. Because General Mahmood was in and out of Washington. He had meetings with the Pentagon, with the CIA, with the State Department. I mean, he was a top-level representative. And suddenly it's discovered that he had paid the pilot who was crashing into the World Trade Center $100,000.
And once again,
and he retires.
Yeah, once again, I don't like to be...
Retires.
I mean, has this been triple sourced and so forth? This is an incredibly important thing.
Yes, there is.
And it is. That's understood by people. We're going to put a couple sites up at the end.
There is a 16-page article on this by a very fine British journalist called Chiam. I'm not even going to try to mispronounce his name.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's one of a number of writers for an excellent website called Global Resources.
Okay, we're going to give up
and we should put the website at the end.
We have put it on the
two
closing
best
graphics,
sources
so you
on
can look
all
for
of
that
this,
in the audience. Yeah.
The two best sources on all of this are Global Resources, Global Research, which is a Canadian website, and another website in New Zealand.
Scoop?
Called Scoop, which has an office in the Parliamentary Bureau in New Zealand.
All right.
So it's a, as it were, an established, secure, non-crazy website. Their research is monumental.
Well, for those who are wondering
and
about
we
how
put both those sites up at the end.
and for those of you who may be wondering that this is just part of the nonsense that you get on the internet and so forth, go and look and judge for yourself. That's one of the nice things about it, because they can go and look at this.
Right.
And that evidence has a way of getting out that it could be smothered, as it has been by the traditional news sources. So this is important stuff.
And the article by Chiam Tupferberg, I believe is his pronunciation, but Chiam Tupferberg has written this extraordinarily detailed article about the $100,000 payment.
All of which should be coming out, because this is a time, and there's pressures for that now, particularly with this Iraq business and all that sort of thing that's coming out. It's incredibly important and significant stuff. The article you've written, which I look forward to being published in a magazine or on the net and so forth, is good, and we are all invited to follow the leads of Kevin Saunders, who's been following this stuff, and judge for yourself the information there, rather than saying, well, if it's internet, it's got to be goofy. It isn't necessarily so. There's some very interesting stuff to be found there. Kevin, thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, we've run out of time. We could go on talking for hours. It's been your pleasure. Had the perception of one of the greatest, the best inveterate, investigative or general reporters that that we have in the country. Kevin Saunders, he's now with War Peace Foundation, and he's also with this Radio
for Peace International.
Radio for Peace International, and happy to bring you his perception. We invite you to tune in. We'll come back next week. Look for the websites at the end of the closing credits, the research websites.
Global Research and Scoop.
Yep, and they're there, and thank you very much. We'll see you next week. So thanks a lot.
Right.
You know, there's been a, you know, so we, see, they're rolling the credit, and I think we've got at the end.
It's as Drudge says, developing hard, and so it certainly is.
Well, I know I read your article. It's incredibly well written and really researched and so forth. It's really good. Now, there's nowhere you can get your article yet, right?
No, not yet.
I thank you for having put that to me. That's
in fact,
really breaking news.
It's almost in draft form.
Yeah.
I want to polish it up a little bit.
Well, there's only a couple of typos I saw. It's very well written. It's really informative.
I think
it's eye-opening.
And I think it
really
has to come out very soon.
It's going to be coming out, and it could come out like in a Watergate kind of way. This thing could you know, this could be implicating people within the administration and that sort of thing.
Oh, huge. Yes, I think it will landslide as the information comes out. And I think the administration could have very real problems.
I think they might be. It seems to me they might be, even now, because they've just been going with this this whole.
They're trying to stop the 911 investigations.
Trying to stop the and get away from the terrorists. Now they're going to try and bring this whole big push on Iraq.
Smother it in
this
the
whole
Iraq
big
war.
Yeah, the whole neocon thing. They've been having that thing for a long time and trying to bring this this ideological thing, and they've been very successful in terms of getting a great deal of the media to follow their lead.
Right.
And that sort of thing.
Yes, the media has been timid. The Democrats have been timid.
The Democrats have been timid. We heard Mr. Mr. Gore made a statement yesterday that they may be beginning to away from their somnambalistic state. They let that tax cut go through.
Very encouraging thing from Gore.
Yeah.
It could be the